What's up, people? This is the Bleav in Saints podcast presented by FanDuel. I am Mario Jerez, Spanish play-by-play voice of the Saints, member of the Saints Hall of Fame Selection Committee. She is my co-host, Erin Summers, seasoned reporter and analyst covering the Saints and the NFL as a whole. And today, we are very excited to welcome our next guest, longtime studio host and personality, host of Countdown Live on FanDuel Sports Network, among many other things. New Orleans native, alum of St. Augustine High School. He is Stan Verrett. Stan, thanks so much for the time today. How are you, my friend?
Erin, Mario, great to see you guys. Doing great.
Good, man. Glad to finally meet you. I was telling Erin before the show, I feel like I've already known you for many years. You've been on my television so much. But like we said in the intro, man, you're from New Orleans. You're a native of the 504, like a lot of our audience. And obviously the culture of sports, very prevalent here, whether you talk about professional sports, college sports. There's a lot of pride in the high schools in this area, as you know. How did growing up in New Orleans specifically influence you to do all that you've done in your career so far?
Well, when I was a kid, I was never more excited than I was on Sunday morning when the Saints had a home game. You know, it was a matter of local pride for me. It was like, that's our team. You know, and even though in my childhood years the team was pretty bad, it had a lot of challenges, and so I didn't get to see a lot of winning. But it was still a thing where, you know, that's our team. And on Sunday, you know, we're as important as New York or LA or San Francisco or whoever showed up at the Dome. You know, we got a team, you got a team, let's see what happens. And so I was just a Saints fan from the time I knew what football was, and have remained so my whole life. And, you know, I figured if this is what I really enjoy, like if this is really what gets me going, why not see if I can make a career out of it, you know? And when I was at St. Aug, I found out very quickly that career wasn't going to be on the field because I realized I didn't have that kind of talent. And so then sports journalism became the goal, and haven't looked back since. So football in particular, football in general, and then the Saints in particular, had a really big influence on my career choice.
And it still is. You are still a diehard Saints fan. You make it out to all of the home games still, even though you live on the West Coast. Why is it so important for you to get back and be a part of that game day atmosphere still?
You guys know Saints games it's a party, and you get to cheer for the home team. My family has moved from New Orleans. Everybody left after Katrina, never went back. So, you know, I have to go different places to see them. I have my younger brother lives in Portugal now. My mom and my sister live in France at this point. And so my connection to New Orleans now is the Saints and my friends. Mm-hmm. So going home for me is usually centered around Saints games, and then I see extended relatives and family. So it's all a part of who I am, you know. Always has been. And so getting to feel the nostalgia of Saints games and remembering that kid who used to sit up in the terrace section for $10 a game from the time I was 12 years old, it's just always nice to be back.
Thanks for mentioning the terrace section, man. I went to the games in the same area of the stadium, section 614 for life, baby, while I'm in the press box now. Yeah, while I'm in the press box now, I'm like you know, those memories kind of shaped my love for this and inspired me to do this. That being said, when you look at the current Saints, it's a franchise that hasn't had that success since Drew Brees retired. We've obviously broken down this all season a lot on the show, and there seems to be a little bit more optimism with Kellen Moore going into year two, with Tyler Shough going into year two. As you look at the Saints team heading into training camp, what's the biggest question you have about them right now?
Well, it's clear that they've invested heavily in Tyler Shough, getting players around him who can help him be successful. And, you know, there's always that NFL cliche about quarterbacks making a big leap from year one to year two. And so especially with some continuity from year to year, staying in the same system, he created a lot of optimism, Shough did, with his finish to the season last year. Kellen Moore in his second season now, getting more of the players that he wants to fit his system, and those players being more acclimated with the playbook and the offensive concepts. I think that's what's created a lot of optimism. They got David Edwards to shore up their offensive line, which, if healthy, could be, the best offensive line we've seen for the Saints in quite a few years. Added Travis Etienne in the backfield. And then, in addition to drafting Chris Tyson, remember, they also brought on Devon Vele last year, who showed some flashes, especially late in the season, and his chemistry with Shough. Jalen Polk has been there in the system, but not playing since last season. Chris Olave had a breakout year. They had some really good chemistry, Olave and Shough. So Juwan Johnson had a good year at tight end. They've got a lot of optimism that Oscar Delp can become a creator. They added Noah Fant. And Mataval is young players developing. So in all the position groups on offense, and then at running back, we'll see what happens with Alvin Kamara. But Arvick Estime was a bell cow toward the end of the season. Devin Neal was productive when he was in there, and you hope Kendre Miller comes back from injury and provides the sort of spark he did early in the season before he got hurt. So there's a lot of pieces there in place. If they all come together and everyone stays healthy, the offense could be really something special, I think. I like the combination of Etienne and Kamara. I think Kamara's been limited the last couple of years by injury and by an offensive line that didn't create a lot of space for him. So I think there's some production left in the tank there. And I think, they may have to tweak the numbers a little bit because the contract that the extension that he signed in 2024 maybe needs some adjustment, but I hope that they can work things out because I think it's a good 1-2 punch with Etienne and Kamara and the young guys behind them. So a lot of reason for optimism on offense. And then on defense, I'm really, really excited about the pass rush. I think we can see some things we haven't seen in a while in the pass rush. I think Tyree Wilson is a really intriguing prospect. He's got a lot of talent. Things haven't worked out for him so far. Injuries have been a part of that, but I think he's a guy with a lot to prove. And I think he's a unique pass rusher, one the Saints really haven't had recently. They haven't had a speed pass rusher. They've had guys who are sort of hybrids. Carl Granderson can get there with speed or he can get there with power. Cam Jordan early in his career could get there with speed or power. It's more power now and veteran savvy, understanding how to deal with opposing offensive linemen. But I think Tyree Wilson, with that speed coming off the edge, you add that with Chase Young, Chris Rumph, who's a promising young player. The pass rush could be something really special. As you guys know, they like to rush up the middle. They did that a lot on blitzes with Demario Davis. I think Caden Ellis can man that position and not see a lot of drop-off. So there's a lot to be excited about. But again, health is always the key.
Health is definitely always the key. And there are a couple of position groups where depth has been a topic of conversation as well, because you mentioned a ton of starters. They look great in a variety of positions. But if a health were to become an issue, depth could be a concern in some areas. What position groups are you really going to be watching over training camp to kind of see how some of those battles, maybe the backups, play out?
I think linebacker is one of the most important ones because Caden Ellis, Pete Werner, Danny Stutzman looking to take the next step. Behind them, I want to see which of the young guys can step up and claim spots. Jalen Ford, Isaiah Stallbird, which guys are going to step up and claim those spots. Because you need depth at linebacker. Those guys are involved in the physical part of the game so much that you need depth there. Also at corner, Quincy Riley and Kool-Aid McKinstry, I think, are the entrenched starters, but who are the guys who are going to step up behind them? So that'll be interesting to see. And then those last few wide receiver spots as well.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some intriguing training camp, but I think the Saints have a pretty good idea of the guys they're counting on. There's not a lot of question marks in terms of guys who have to step up and be counted on to play primary roles. I think those roles are established. So the real questions in training camp are going to be about backups and depth.
Stan, we're both broadcasters now covering the Saints, and we were both at one time players in the Catholic League. Like you said, you were a wide receiver at St. Augustine. I was a defensive lineman at Brother Martin, believe it or not. But since you are a former player and that was your position, I want to ask you about a specific player that you already mentioned on the Saints offense, and that's Chris Olave. And not to speak for Aaron, but I've been saying on our show that I feel like Chris Olave is a little bit underappreciated by this fan base. There are some narratives that get thrown out that just aren't true, like the one that he's injury prone. He played 4 games in 2024, yes, because of concussions, but other than that, he's played in 15 plus games in each of the other seasons and had 1,000+ yards in each of those seasons through some inconsistent quarterback play, through a lot of turnover on the coaching staff. Chris Olave has been one of my favorite guys to watch. You having the national perspective, but also being so in tune with this team, how would you describe Chris Olave as a wide receiver, and where would you kind of rank him among the NFL's best?
Look, he's a very productive player. I think last year he really developed a connection with Tyler Shough and entrenched himself as a true number one receiver. I think he's the best option at receiver. I've never liked the term injury prone, not just for Chris Olave, but for any player. I mean, a lot of that is just a matter of luck. He had some really unfortunate situations with concussions early in his career a couple of years ago. Luckily, he got through last season without that becoming a major concern, because those are the kinds of things that you can't really, you can't play with that. It's very serious. It has lifelong ramifications, and it can cause players to really assess whether this is what they want to do for much longer, given the long-term impact. So it's good to see that hopefully in that situation he's okay moving forward. But other than that, I don't think the injury-prone label is fair, because it's such a physical game. Players are putting their bodies on the line literally every single play. And so you take a wrong step trying to make a play in a non-contact situation, or you take a big hit, or you interact with the ground on the way down after being hit. I mean, there's just so many ways to find yourself hurt in the NFL because of the physical nature of the game that I don't think the injury-prone label is fair. I think it's more a matter, honestly, of luck. I think all these guys prepare their bodies for what they're going to face during the season. So unless it's a matter of neglect, which I don't think is the case here, or for most NFL players, I think it's just a matter of the physical nature of the game and whether or not you have the good fortune to be able to withstand that. And that's been a problem in the past, but last season it really wasn't. So let's hope that that's the case moving forward for Chris Olave, because I think he's a very important piece to the Saints' success, not only this season, but moving forward.
And they need a 1-2 punch when it comes to wide receiver. He didn't really have that counterpart last year, especially when they traded Rashid Shaheed, and they were depleted because of injuries as well. Jordan Tyson comes in. He's been limited. He has an injury history. So what's the concern level there with him and not seeing him full strength yet for the Saints?
Well, I think the Saints did a lot of pre-draft work with him. They saw him a lot. It looks like every time I heard media reports, there was somebody at Arizona State watching Jordan Tyson. And when you think back on it now, it's almost pretty obvious when you look back that he was going to be the pick because of how much time they invested in scouting. So I would imagine that they did their due diligence on the medicals to make sure that there weren't any sorts of issues that could linger into his professional career. I think they're taking a very cautious approach with him so far through the off-season workout program. So they just have to be prudent, have to be smart, and make sure that when it comes time for week one, that he's ready to go and in the best position to capitalize on his talent, which is prodigious. I mean, he makes a lot of contested catches. He's very explosive. I think he's a great compliment. And I think when they go 3 wide with Olave and Tyson and Devon Vele, and you throw in Juwan Johnson, and Etienne's ability out of the backfield creates a lot of matchup problems for defenses. So I think he's an important piece, but I trust that they did their due diligence on the health aspects of him as a player. So they just have to get him to week 1 ready to go.
Stan, we've talked to a lot of national guys about the NFC South, and like you on your shows, we like to have a lot of fun at the Falcons' expense. As I tell y'all about the current FanDuel odds to win the NFC South, the Falcons had the longest shot as it sits at plus 320. The Panthers are at plus 300, according to our friends at FanDuel. The Saints right behind the Bucs is the betting favorite. The Saints at plus 260 to win the division, and then Tampa, the betting favorite, 2-1, pretty much at plus 200 odds. There's been a lot of parity in this division, and not in a good way, Stan. I feel like 4 different fan bases in 4 different cities feel like they have a pretty good shot at this thing. But for the Saints specifically, how realistically do you think winning the NFC South is this year?
I mean, I think it's wide open. I think the Saints have as good a shot as anybody if they stay healthy and if we see the development that we've talked about. I mean, Tyler Shough obviously is the big piece to this puzzle. They've given him the tools that he needs. And, you know, from all indications, he's going about this the right way in terms of the grind of being an NFL quarterback and understanding that it's a year-long process. It's a year-round process. And I think he's been very meticulous about that from what it seems. And I think he understands the opportunity that he has here. Being a player who's somewhat older going into his second year, I think he also has a grasp of the limitations that his age puts on him in terms of the length of his career. He's got to start getting it done now. You know, he's not 21 or 22. He's got to start getting this done now. So I think he's aware of that, and I think, at least it seems that's created a sense of urgency in him to really get this thing going this year in his second year. So that's the biggest linchpin, I think, to the Saints taking the division. But again, I'm really excited about the pass rush. I think there's so much potential there, and if you have productive play on your side at quarterback and then disruptive elements on your defense to keep other teams from having productive play at quarterback, then I think you're off to a great start. And I think those are the 2 things that I think the Saints have invested in this offseason. And if they pay off, I think they should be the favorites to win the division.
You keep talking about the pass rush. I got to bring Cam Jordan back up again. How glad were you when you found out that it was official? He's back with the Saints for at least 1 more year.
Yeah. Goodbye is hard with a guy like Cam Jordan. He's meant so much to this franchise. I think he means a lot to those young guys who are sharing that unit with him, having that veteran presence in the room. I mean, I think Chase Young, if he stays healthy, could work his way into the Defensive Player of the Year conversation based on what he did last year when he was healthy. So having a Cam Jordan there with Wilson and Rumph and Granderson, I think it's and Chase Young, I think it's a great addition to that unit. You have everything from veteran savvy to established players in Granderson and Young to young guys and Rumph and Wilson who are looking to make their mark. So I think it's a good mix at that position. And Cam is a great part of that. And it's like I said, it would have been hard to say goodbye, especially if he wore another uniform. I mean, some guys are just supposed to be Saints their entire careers, and I think he's one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to see him and Kamara back, even if it's in a different role. I think both those guys deserve to be part of the next chapter if the Saints are to start winning some games here, Stan. That being said, let's talk a little bit more about Kellen Moore. Had some really good games towards the end of his first year as an NFL head coach. Definitely some growing pains in the beginning there with things like time management and stuff like that. But what are your impressions of Kellen Moore so far, and what do you want to see out of him as an NFL head coach in year 2?
I think he just needed to get acclimated. The success in Philly was what it was, so we know that he can produce at a high level. He can win at a high level, but, you know, there's an adjustment when you go from offensive coordinator to now in charge of the whole thing. You know, I'd like to see the Saints get off to good starts this season. So many times last year they got off to poor starts and they wound up playing uphill the rest of the game. So that's one of the points of emphasis I think they should focus on. But I think Kellen Moore knows what types of players he needs at particular positions, and I think they've gone out and gotten those players. And again, continuity matters a lot because since Sean Payton left, there just hasn't been a lot of continuity year to year in terms of head coach and quarterback. And so that's one of the things when you look at successful NFL franchises, they have those two things figured out, head coach and quarterback. Whether that's a Sean Payton and a Drew Brees, a Bill Belichick and a Tom Brady, most successful teams have that figured out and have some continuity from year to year with their head coach and their quarterback. And so the Saints have that now. They can build on what they did, particularly toward the end of last year when Shough came on. So I think that's the key, building on what they did last year, getting out to quicker starts so that the entire playbook is available and you're not in situations where you have to go pass heavy early in a game to try to stay in a game. They need to be able to establish the run so that play action works better, so that you can use some RPO threats and just open up the whole playbook. It's hard to do that when you get behind in the NFL because you got to throw the ball. And when teams know you have to throw the ball, that's when things can get kind of iffy. So it's important to get off to good starts and establish the run. I think David Edwards will help a lot with that.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about better starts again because that's all we talked about last season. If they just started a little bit better, then the game would have been different. But they are emphasizing it even in off-season training, making sure that the start of practice is as crisp and clean and energetic as it possibly can be. So it's definitely top of mind for sure. We've seen the schedule. We have a little bit of an idea of where some of the opponents might stack up. What is the record going to be for the Saints at the end of the season?
Ooh, that's always tough because health is such a big part of it, and you just don't know how that's going to play out. I could see an 11-6 season if things fall the way that they need to fall. I think it's important not just a fast start to games, but also a fast start to the season in terms of winning, because there was talk last year at the end of the season about whether the Saints should sort of pack it in and just write last season off, work on getting a better draft pick, and I was squarely in the camp against that because I think winning matters. It matters all the time. It's what you're there to do. And so I don't think there would be as much optimism and confidence going into this season if they hadn't finished the season last year the way that they did. I think that carries over into this season. And I think the same way when a team starts a game well and they establish to the other team that we're imposing our will for the next 3 hours, we're in charge of what happens here from the very beginning, I think a quick start to the season can have the same effect, especially when you have a young coaching staff and young players. They need the confidence that comes from winning. So getting off to a quick start, I think, is going to be important because it's just human nature. Success builds on success. So coming out of the gate early in games and to start the season, I think is going to be very important because of the youth and the relative lack of experience involved here.
Stan, before we let you go, I got to ask you to reminisce on what was a really good time for you, a really good time for all of our audience back in 2009 when the Saints won the Super Bowl. And I want to commend you, man, because I think you did a really good job encapsulating what the franchise kind of means to the city throughout that whole run. Like, the nation knew about Katrina, they knew about Drew Brees, but I don't think they knew about that 40-year connection between city and franchise. And you did a really good job illustrating that. Take me back to that time. What was it like for a New Orleans native to be on that 4-letter network, get to break down such a great team, and ultimately get to cover a Super Bowl for the whole country, but also for your family and your friends back at home?
Yeah, it was magical. I was talking to a friend of mine that do some work for NBA TV, and one of the producers there is a diehard Knicks fan, and he's been waiting his whole life for a championship. And he was at ESPN when I was at ESPN in 2009. He said, "Oh man, so now I know what it feels like wait that long, and then it finally happens. And so I think that was what we all were feeling. Those of us who've been around a long time, who had been waiting for that moment, believing that someday it was going to happen. It was just everything came together. I spent a lot of that season exhausted because I went to 14 of the 19 games that season. I went to a lot of road games. I went to all the home games and a bunch of road games as well, all the playoff games and the Super Bowl. And the thing that I really remember about the Super Bowl is there was a gentleman sitting in the same section I was sitting in at the stadium in Miami. And he had on a Billy Kilmer jersey that was not a new jersey. It was a Billy Kilmer jersey from back when Billy Kilmer was the Saints quarterback when the franchise originally started 60 years ago. And I saw him, and I just went over to him, didn't know him. I just said, "Sir, does that mean what I think it means?" And he says, "Yes, it does. It means I've been there since day one, Tulane Stadium, 1967. And I said, "Well, how you feeling about today?" He said, "Man, we got to win this because I don't know if I'm going to live long enough to see another one." So, and when we're in the end zone, so we see Tracy Porter make the pick, and we see nothing but green in front of him. And we realized at that point, this game's over. And I ran down to go give him a hug, and the tears were already flowing. And I think he's emblematic of the relationship between this team and this city. I mean, it's, everybody, every city, every NFL team, every NBA, every major pro sports team says, "Oh, man, this team means so much to this city." Everybody says that, but it's evident in New Orleans. From the time you land at the airport, it's evident what the Saints mean to the city because it's everywhere. And it was just such a great thing to know that people who had invested so much time and energy and money into this finally got to experience winning at the highest level. To say we're the best, we won the Super Bowl. It was great for everybody. I told when they got to 7-0, I told the scheduling guy at ESPN, I said, "I'm going to need the whole week off after the Super Bowl." And he said, "You got a feeling about the Saints, right?" I said, "Yeah, I do. And if they win it, I'm going to need the whole week." So we're in Miami, and we're trying to get back to New Orleans to go to the parade because the parade was on Tuesday. And so it's like, we're thinking we got at least until Wednesday, but the parade's on Tuesday, so we're trying to get back. So I remember calling American Airlines, and I said, "Look, I'm on a flight on Wednesday morning, and I'm trying to get a flight on Tuesday night back to New Orleans." And she said, "Yeah, you and everybody else." She's like, "Everybody on that flight is trying to get back." She's like, "What's going on?" I said, "There's a Super Bowl parade. Saints won the Super Bowl." So I didn't get back. I watched the parade from a beach bar in Miami on ESPN News because they were the only ones carrying it. So I was able to see it. But then I got back home, and it was just a week-long party everywhere you went. I mean, visiting friends and relatives, everybody was like, "Hey, man, let's get something to eat. Let's have a drink. Can you believe we did it?" And it was just a citywide party the whole week. And I have memories from that I'll never forget. And so now I want new ones. And I want a new generation of Saints fans who've been somewhat spoiled. The Breeze era Saints fans who didn't go through what we all went through during the early days. I want them to experience it again. And then us old timers get one more crack at it.
Yeah, I love your perspective and your stories. It's so fun getting to talk to you. I know you're busy on the golf course, but you're also very busy still dabbling in a bunch of different things media-wise. So where can we find some of your stuff coming up?
So we're going to be doing the Big Three with Ice Cube on CBS. I got a slate of games coming up on July 12th.
Nice.
I'm in and out at NBA TV. I did some work with the Saints last season, doing a pregame show with Scott Shanley and contributing to your show midweek, Erin. So I hope to be involved with the Saints once again. And then the NBA and work with the LA Clippers last season, doing their pregame, halftime, and postgame show here in Los Angeles. So hoping to work with them again. There's a lot of uncertainty among NBA broadcast situations right now because of the decline of these regional sports networks. So a lot to figure out there, but I'm hoping to get to do a lot of the stuff that I did last season because I really had a lot of fun. To get to this point in your career and to still have new and exciting things to do was really fun. I didn't know what the future would look like when I left ESPN last year, because I'd been there for 25 years and just kind of always assumed I'm going to retire from there. So when they moved the show back to Bristol, my life was established here in Los Angeles. I didn't want to move back to Connecticut. So I didn't really know what it would look like, but I found new and interesting and exciting projects to be involved in, and it's been a blast. And so I just hope to continue doing a lot of those same things.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome, man. And stuff like that's common in the industry, but the way that you've bounced back has shown that you're one of the best in the industry. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your perspective. And let's do this again soon, man. A lot of fun talking Saints football with you.
Absolutely. Hey, look, anytime you want to talk Saints football, I'm available. Thank you guys for the kind words, and thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. That is Stan the Man Verrett. For Erin Summers, I'm Mario Jerez saying thank you for listening. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcast. For Erin, for Stan, I am Mario Jerez saying thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. This has been the Bleav in Saints podcast. Talk to y'all soon. Who dat?